You are listening to the Gritty Podcast, where we talk about all things gritty.
Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I'm your co-host, Brad Hunt. Brian is off having a good time with the folks over at Loophole, doing some long-range shooting, rifle stuff, scope stuff. So he's having fun while we're out here working. Real quick, podcast this week is with Brady Miller. It's a one of two-part series dropping right now, and it's pretty interesting. I think you're going to like this conversation that they have. They touch on some articles that have been written a couple years ago. Brady was also part of one of the articles in part 2 of the series. I think you're going to enjoy it. Right now, I want to remind you, we have a giveaway going on at Mountain Ops. You want to win this PSE bow? Well, not this bow, but the exact PSE that I'm holding, the PSE Evo XF, and also a trip to TAC, Solitude, Utah. We're giving away a fully expense-paid trip to get your bow set up at WILDE ARROW ARCHERY. Come shoot with us at TAC. And you also, like I said, win a new PSE Evo XF. So all you have to do is shop over at mountainops.com. Use the code GRITTY to be entered. You'll get 15% off and you'll receive free shipping as well. So head over to mountainops.com. Again, use the code GRITTY and you'll be entered to win the PSE Evo and the fully expense paid bow build and flight out to Utah to shoot Total Archery Challenge with us and some friends. Also, we do have a giveaway going on with GOHUNT. Right now, if you use the code GRITTY at GOHUNT.com in the gear shop, you get 10% off and you'll be entered to win. Every $10 you spend, you'll be entered to win the prize package that we have. If you want 150 extra entries, use the code GRITTY when you shop the Insider membership. With the Insider membership, you get tools to scouting, you get your digital maps, and then you also get a $50 credit towards the GOHUNT Gear Shop when you purchase the Insider membership. So head over to GOHUNT.com right now, use the code GRITTY. Every $10 you spend is going to give you an entry. Good luck to all of you. Again, this is part 1 of a 2-part series. Thanks for tuning in.
Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Call, and today my guest is Brady Miller. And we're going to talk about, we're going to dive into some topics that have been in the social, they're kind of hot button topics in the hunting space. One of them is this, one of the articles I wanted to go over was written by Nicole Qualtieri on the Gear Junkie page. It was, this is from 2021, so it's been a minute. But on this page, she wrote an article called The Hunter Decline Myth. And I wanted to sort of, it says, and then it says habitat, the subtitle, not hunting is at risk. There's some really interesting facts in here. I actually have covered this a few years prior to this, because you know how we're always being told, Brady, that we're losing hunters. There's a hunter decline. We need more and more hunters, or we're going to lose all of our hunting rights and so forth and so on. And meanwhile, you and I are having a more and more difficult time to get tags. And so I read some article out of New York that says hunting is done for. It's over. We just need to ban this and cancel that. And nobody hunts anymore except backwards redneck people and all this. And then I'm like, if hunting is such an anachronistic activity, meaning an old timey thing that nobody does anymore, it's lost its value. And if it's on the decline so much, then it's like, why is it so hard to get a tag?
Yeah. Then have people explain point creep,
explain to me why it's more popular than ever.
Yeah.
You got guys like Joe Rogan talking about it. Cam Haines doing, like all I have seen is the exact opposite of what I'm being told, which is that it seems that hunting has become more and more popular in the United States than it ever has in years previous. So I see with my own eyes, one thing, I see the popularity of Meat Eater when it hit Netflix. I remember that. I can remember like some mainstream people going, wait a minute, you have Tim Ferriss on a hunt with Ranella, and you're like, wait a minute, these are worlds colliding. These are, I saw more appreciation for hunting and a decrease in demand for tags. Meanwhile, I'm being told also at the same time that we're losing hunters by the bucket load. no one hunts anymore, and we got to rush out and try to get more hunters. And that's a touchy subject.
Very, very touchy, especially in today's world.
Especially among, like, I'm the same way. Like, I don't want to see more hunters hit the mountains. I want less and less people hunting in my backyard or in the units I go to. The last thing I want is to share my hunting grounds with what I would declare as the enemy when I'm in the mountains. My friends and co-conspirators when we're at home, but as soon as we're on the mountain, they're just a-holes. Yep. They're the enemy.
And I think that's a common thing too. It's like most people are going to think that way, but I think some people take that to the extreme, like, oh, you don't want people out there because you think it's your spot. But it's like, it's really, no, it's like you get down to it and you're going to go out there hunting on a weekend. I don't care what day of the week it is. You took some vacation time. Like, no one really wants to see another person. It is 100% true. When you, no matter who you ask, if you dive deep enough with them, they'll be like, yeah, I don't want to see another person because I want to enjoy it and I want to be successful.
I've been reading this book. It's on another podcast I'm going to launch. Spoiler alert. So this is going to be a daily podcast where I go through books I've read, and whole different show. It's going to be cool. But in this book, it's about Daniel Boone, and you're sitting here and I'm reading through it. And I as I read the past, and how the world used to be, it's pretty crazy, come full circle. But even back then, okay, can you think of anything more primal than defending your hunting grounds? I mean, that's all the Indians did. They were like, dude, this tribe moves in and wipes out this tribe and says, we hunt here now. Mm-hmm. And then a different tribe comes in and goes, no, we hunt here now. And all they ever did was seem to fight about hunting grounds. And then the same thing happened with Boone. He'd find places, he'd be like, this is my spot. And then too many settlers came in. He's like, I got to move further west. This sucks now. Yep. So you got to know, like, since the dawn of time, human beings have been fighting over resources. It's a competitive world out there. The strong survive. And so deep within us, I think, is the desire to especially protect hunting grounds. Mm-hmm. I think it's like caveman era, like instilled within us to be super protective and viscerally angry about hunting ground infringement. And so I think it's deep. I think it goes deeper in our psyche than we realize. And so it doesn't surprise me that you get blowback from other hunters, especially like you're at GOHUNT. Mm-hmm. All you're doing is enabling people to find more tags, more areas to hunt, more land to hit, more resources to research. You're the enemy.
Yep. That's what some people would definitely like to make other people believe.
So I want to get into that subject today. And I want to start off with Nicole's article. I want to set the stage with the discussion. Then I want to come back and talk about, okay, now that we have a set of data that we all get, that's more reflective of reality, then what's the solution? What's the way forward, and sort of discuss that. And you wrote a great article, and I'm going to refer to that after this one. Okay. So let's just bounce through what she said, and I'm just going to put it on the screen. Those that are watching the podcast, you can see the article, but I'm just going to put it on the screen here. And Brady, can you see this by chance? Nope, that's not.
Oh, I can see it now.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to sort of read this. You just let me know if you're having any trouble seeing the screen. So this was written by Nicole in 2021. Props to Nicole. I actually have followed some of her work back when she was with Meat Eater. I love that she just speaks her mind. She says what she thinks, and I don't always agree with her, but I love people who well, she's a great writer too, but I love people who put it all out there and are very articulate. So here we go. So it says the number of hunters is actually on the rise, and quality habitat is at the lowest it's ever been. Would you agree with that?
It took me a minute to sit down and understand that statement, because it's a heavy statement right away. But then you think about it, like we were talking earlier, you think about draw odds and tag numbers and applications every year. And you can see it, I believe you can totally see it in the data with people hunting and applying out west, especially like I'm just talking about Western hunting. Like, yeah, seems like hunting is on the rise in the West.
Yeah. So it says over the past few years, the hunting community has jumped full sail into what it's calling the R3 movement. R3 stands for recruitment, retention, and reactivation of hunters. Now, keep in mind, this was written in 2021. And I recall, 2017, 2018, 2019, this sort of hunter recruitment effort. I remember different states had these initiatives to try to get new hunters to come and enter the fold. And so she goes on to say, it's an interesting idea, but it bears a closer look. While hunters are on the decline per capita, the actual number of hunters in the American landscape tells a different story. This goes on to explain kind of what our experience, or what my experience has been. It says, and beyond that, habitat and biodiversity in the lower 48 are both well into declines that are not only alarming, but also potentially devastating. And it's talking about habitat, right? So there are three things I think we need to look at from a wholesale perspective. The first is the consistent use of fear-based marketing tactics. Now, she goes on to describe this article goes on. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, but it says, understanding the main issues is just the first step in correcting a narrative. What follows is a call to action, to educate rather than to try to recruit our non-hunting friends. Because what hunting really needs is more hunters, is not more hunters, but more habitat. So I'm not opposed to what she's saying here. I would love for everybody to appreciate hunting at a vast scale and then also not go hunting.
Yeah. Yep.
Except for me and my friends.
Yep. But that is the big point though, with like the non-hunting crowd. You don't need them to be like, oh yeah, I want to go hunting. You just need them to be supportive of hunting.
Right. And I think this is I want to get into that in just a minute. But first, because this I think is a little pie in the sky, in my opinion. But let's hear her out and finish reading what she has to say. It says, the decline of hunting, scarier and sexier than your Halloween costume. Off the bat, I'd like to set the record straight. I'm all for new hunters coming into the fold. I'm in my 7th year of hunting, and other hunters have certainly helped me get there. I've hosted a women's hunting camp, in part to help introduce novice hunters to the pastime. Personally, I'm not sure hunters can be created or recruited out of marketing efforts. And I would agree with that. I don't think it's necessarily, as there are more and more hunters, because although the per capita number has declined, the overall number of hunters has been fairly solid or the same. But let's keep reading. It says, but I do think that a broad and general public who views hunting positively is the best deal we hunters could possibly create for ourselves. So she's not saying she doesn't want anybody to become a new hunter. She's like, look, if you want to do it, I support that. I'm not trying to say we should prevent new hunters from coming into the fold. But also she's saying, but ideally, I think the best view would be for the non-hunting public to become a proponent of hunters, to support hunting, but not actually become hunters.
Yep.
So that is a tough needle to thread, don't you think?
It is. But again, this is making you think really hard, which I really appreciate.
She says over and over again, I've heard organizations. Now, this is something that she mentions where she feels like some of the marketing around hunting is fear-based marketing, where organizations will say things like, there are fewer hunters than ever. If we recruit more hunters, then we'll save conservation. Or hunters are in decline. We need more hunters or the system is going to fail us and we're going to lose our hunting traditions. If we don't have enough hunters, we don't have enough money to protect the things we love to hunt. More hunters, more money. So I when I read that, I don't like attributing when she says it's fear-based marketing. It, to me, you're sort of attributing a motive to the people saying this, one of deception, right? And I don't think it's when someone says there are fewer hunters than ever and we need to get more hunters so we can save conservation. I don't think they're trying to manipulate an audience. I think they genuinely feel this way or think this way. I think it comes from a good place, but it might be uninformed. It might be, a lot of times we jump to a conclusion, but if we don't have enough hunters, we don't have enough money to protect the things we love to hunt. More hunters, more money. Would you disagree with that?
I mean, I think you'd have to almost agree with it in a sense, because when you think about it, just as, again, maybe the fear-based marketing thing is just someone not thinking about the collective use of all the data in front of them to make that decision. They're just being like, well, in 10 years, the way this world is going, maybe hunting will not be here because we don't have enough support. So maybe there is some thought in their head, like, yeah, hunters are in decline. We're not going to have enough money to continue to do the things that we love. We're not going to be able to support different areas and, create different, conservation initiatives. So, because hunters are the ones who are going to contribute most, to going out there and, working on guzzler projects out here, like in a state like Nevada, or trying to, reintroduce species where they haven't been before. And you need money to do that. And who's better to do it than a hunter, and to get their money to go towards those things. So it does kind of make sense again. But maybe they're not just using the data correctly, because I don't know if it's fully fear marketing, but it's something crazy to think about that maybe it could have been, and they just didn't have the data. So if they would have had the data, some better data, they would have, done it this way or said it these ways.
And in all three of these quotes that she put in here, they are basically saying that the solution is built into the problem in the statement. Problem is, we're going to lose our hunting privileges. We're going to lose the ability to hunt down the road. Animals aren't going to be as protected and cared for. You're going to have developments move in, cities built where we lose public lands, those sorts of things. Those are the risks, the problems, and the solution would be we need more hunters so that doesn't happen. So that's built into the statement.
Yep.
But what she's kind of saying is maybe more hunters isn't necessarily the solution to this problem. She acknowledges the problem we all do, right? Like there is a decline in habitat, a decline sometimes in the support of hunting as a modern day viable way to get food, as a moral activity. There are many out there who would say that it just doesn't belong anymore, right? So there is the potential for losing habitat, conservation, rights, privileges. All that's real. But the solution may not be to recruit more hunters. It's kind of this, I feel like, what she's saying. Her spidey sense comes into play whenever she feels like she's being told emergency, 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 we're going to lose everything. Then she starts to go, wait a minute, I don't know. And I think that's good. I think it's good to have that sort of skeptic approach to things.
Yeah, even that sentence right there. It's one thing to increase your bottom line. That's all fine and good, but it's another to massage numbers and messaging in certain ways to do it.
And that's where she could be right. That what's happened is some of this is known to be false. Some of the data, but it's been massaged in order to accomplish a political objective. Right.
So you can always look at data a bunch of different ways to make it work for your agenda. Right. Everyone should know that by now. And
so that's one of the things that she's saying is, and she does say, I'd be remiss to not mention that a lot of this fear comes down to money. Hunters and anglers do contribute a lot of money to conservation through a variety of sources, including hunting licenses, excises, taxes, travel, buying power, and more. It's certainly in the best interest of any membership-based organization, brand, or wildlife agency to generate more income. Okay. But like she said, it's one thing to increase your bottom line. That's all fine and good, but it's another to manipulate numbers, to manipulate an outcome, manipulate a community. So let's look at it a different way. So here's where she gets into some very interesting numbers. I remember covering this in a podcast years ago because I had heard a show where they were talking about how hunting is circling the drain. There's hardly any hunters left. It's all and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I can't get a tag in all kinds of places. It's more popular than ever. I don't see the hunting shows on a decline. I see more people interested in it as it's become more accessible, doable, more knowledge has been shared about it. I see the exact opposite. While you're telling me hunting is disappearing, I see it growing. The two things are not lining up. So then I was like, well, is it an East Coast versus West Coast thing? Is it sort of declining in states like, in a lot of whitetail states while it's gaining popularity in the West because of access, public land? Like, I started to have all these questions. Then I started to look at the data and look at the overall number of hunters. Things started to make sense. So she goes into this here. When we talk about what percent of hunters exist across the national population, it ain't big. At less than 4% of the population, hunters are outnumbered, but that's nothing new. In 1958, the American population was about 175 million. Today, our population stands at nearly 333 million people. Around the same time, so it's doubled. 54 million folks lived in rural areas. Now there's 59 million in rural areas. So rural areas are more populated than they used to be as well. There's just more people. Even with more people living in rural areas, the per capita percentage of rural America sharply declined as our urban population grew. So she basically says in 1958, 14 million people owned a hunting license. And in 2020, about 15 million own a hunting license. So that's a million more since 1958. More
Which
hunters.
seems crazy. Like, you'd think that'd be maybe a little bit higher.
You would think. But she also said that the peak was in 1982 with 17 million licensed hunters. Okay, so look, that number's tiny when you look at the overall scale. You're talking 14 million, 17 million, 15 million. She mentions how they come and go, 1 million to 2 million per year of a different number. But the point is that the overall number of hunters has gone up while the percentage of hunters in the population has gone down.
Yeah, because the population is probably growing at a faster rate than the hunter numbers are growing.
So she says, put another way for more context, in 1958, 8% of the population hunted. In 1982, 7%. And in 2020, 4.5% hunt of the overall population. So yeah, that's a decline per capita, but it's not, in my opinion, a damaging one, she writes. Okay. So yeah, I mean, if you think about it, the same number of hunters overall, the gross number of hunters is kind of the same as it was 60 years ago.
Yep.
Which is interesting. I mean, the increase in the number of hunters really isn't that different. I mean, it's a pretty small population of people who hunt overall. So here we are as hunters dealing with a pretty small group of us that actually hunt in comparison to the overall nation. And so coming down, her argument then is, wait a minute, why is it getting harder to get tags then? If the hunting numbers really haven't gone up overall, but they haven't really dropped, they've gone up a little bit, then why is getting tags harder? Why does it seem like it's harder to find a place to hunt? This comes into the next part of our article that says the real decline, habitat loss. Habitat loss comes in three types: destruction, fragmentation, and degradation. And America has all three in spades. the grasslands of the American plains stand as some of the most imperiled in the nation. American grasslands have declined by nearly 60%. Now, that's not surprising. Look, try and build a subdivision in, let's say, I don't know, the Frank Church Wilderness. It's not very easy.
Yep, ain't gonna work.
Ain't gonna work. It's just too rugged. Then you pick up the grasslands. They're the first to go. I mean, it's so easy to just plop in houses for humans to move in, to set up shop, for Three Forks to turn into a subdivision pretty quick. Like Montana, you just see these things happen in grassland type areas. And she goes on to say the grasslands, she said there's serious fragmentation and monocultural agriculture practices that harm flora, fauna at alarming rates. Since colonization, American grasslands have declined by 60%. So wetlands and waterways are also a problem. They've lost nearly 17 million acres since the 1950s of wetlands. And this is just due to human population growth. To top it off, a recent study said that she says private lands make up 60% of the U.S. landmass, and they're the most affected by habitat loss is on private lands. So thankfully, the U.S. has a more robust system of public lands than most countries, but this isn't the catch-all for habitat. I think some 18% of the nation is public land, federally managed public land. That means 82% of the nation is owned by private individuals, which then have the ability to do what they want with that private land. That's why I'm dead set against the idea of turning federally managed public lands over to the states. First of all, it robs the inheritance of every U.S. citizen who gets to own that land on a federal basis. If you're from Montana, and if you're not from Montana, all of a sudden Montana gets to own all the land within its borders, you just robbed me and everyone else who's a U.S. citizen of access to that land as an inheritance that we got by virtue of being in America.
Yep.
Right. And then in addition to that, the states have just traditionally sold off 99 or 100% of their lands over the period of time. It's just a slow road to privatization. That's all it is. And then states aren't required to manage them under the same laws that federally managed lands are. So if you're going to imperil the last 18% of untouched land, I mean, can't the animals just have that? Can't wildlife just have that 18% and we effing humans just leave it alone? Like sometimes
they need somewhere to go.
I mean, come on, like let's just leave that alone. And then how about we just use up what we have? And in the meantime, I do think there's quite a bit of education that's gone into, as I'll make this argument, as hunting has become more popular, you see much more care for the land in terms of holding wildlife, from birds to deer. You can see it, especially in the Midwest to the East, where you see these like Meat Eater. They did that show with Mark Kenyon, Wired to Hunt, where they basically bought a piece of land and then they turned it into a whitetail paradise. And by turning it into a whitetail paradise, they also turned it into a small game paradise, a bird paradise, a squirrel paradise. Like whenever you improve habitat for whitetails, it kind of just does it for everything else. And she kind of mentions that in this article.
Trickle effect.
And so you do see an improvement in habitat as a demand for hunting increases. More and more landowners are trying to improve their land so it can hold more animals than it used to, by providing the right cover, the right feed, and the right water, all of those things and all of that trickles down to the rest of the animals that are on that land as well. monoculture agriculture practices are just devastating. When you have, as far as you can see, a sea of corn and that's it, you can't have a varied habitat there. And then anything that does move in and live there, you're just going to grind it up when the combines come through. It's just, it's terrible. But her point is that look at the data. The habitat that was available from the 50s to now has decreased, and she's not wrong. I mean, you and I can just look back to our childhoods in some rural area we were at. There wasn't a house to be found, and now it's a city.
Yeah, it's hard to go back from that ever. I don't think we'll ever will be able to. You can't take a forest and turn it into a city and turn it back into a forest in a short amount of time or ever, because now it's privatized, not public anymore. If it did get switched later, or people sold it off and just decided to mow down their entire forest that their family had, and now it's a development, now it's a ski resort, now it's whatever it may be. And it's like, well, where's the wildlife going to go?
Well, and it's not like it
place you used to hunt going.
And here's something to note, though. It doesn't necessarily mean that wildlife can't coexist in those populated areas. But the wildlife that can coexist there are the ones that win the lottery. They're the ones that thrive when humans come in and put in a golf course. And then there's the animals that die because you put in a golf course. Coyotes, they can live in downtown Chicago in mass groups, which they do. Then you can go and look at, okay, what about white-tailed deer? Do they thrive? Wherever humans go, they thrive. What animals don't? Mule deer don't do well.
Yep.
Elk don't do well. Grizzly bears do not do well. There are mountain lions do not do well. There are animals that seem to, you got rats, coyotes, and whitetails that can just thrive in any metropolis, it seems. I mean, I'm looking at some of those deer shot in downtown, Atlanta, and you're just like, you see, who are they? Seek One. They do all those urban deer hunts, You shoot giant deer. There's deer everywhere. It's a deer problem. There are animals who win the lottery in well-populated. They're just coyotes. Wherever humans move in, coyotes thrive. Wolves don't.
Like you said, there's always a net loss of some of those species at the same time.
There are certain animals that just aren't able to adapt to human expansion, and those who thrive amongst it, which makes it all the more important than to try to conserve land that is needed for, like, the grizzly, for those animals that those fragile species like mule deer that struggle when humans take over. So she talks about, an 85% decrease in the bird population since 1966. This is for bobwhite quail. There's an 85% decrease in bobwhite quail since 66. That's sad.
It's crazy.
So, she says we can manage timber for both birds and the economy, meaning that we could do both, and we can help increase hunting opportunities in the process. So, she's just talking about basically this issue of habitat loss, which is real. And she's not saying we can't drill, we can't do fracking, we can't do logging, she's not saying we can't do these things, but she's saying we can do them more responsibly than we have. Let me skip ahead here. Yeah, she mentioned this. As many conservationists say, what's good for the bird is good for the herd. It's all interconnected. Or you could say the other way, right? As I see all these guys, cultivating their land to sustain badass whitetail, herds and stuff, they're making it so all animals that live there, turkeys to raccoons to everything, seem to do.
Insects, all that stuff's going to benefit.
So it says, next part of our article says, under pressure, decreased opportunity. with increased demand. If you've ever thought to yourself, wow, my favorite hunting spot is getting hammered, guess it's not my favorite spot anymore. You're not alone. The increase of hunters and the decrease of opportunity is a serious issue. And we've talked to, this is what we're all experiencing. Now, she's saying, look, it's not necessarily a huge increase in hunter population that is the root of our problem. It's the habitat is shrinking. And that is in turn affecting every hunter that wants to hunt still. So it says the meat of this oxtail. Here's the meat of this oxtail. By the way, what is that saying? Like, have you heard that before?
It's an interesting saying. The meat of this oxtail. I mean, I love oxtail soup.
I mean, I kind of get what she's. What's another saying that's similar to that? The heart of the matter or something?
Yeah.
But now it comes from that skin meat. What is? I think it's funny. Anyway, what she says is we have more hunters than we did in 1958, and we have lost large amounts of quality habitat to hunt. You know, Newberg has been talking about this for years. You know, where he kind of grew up. You could just walk out your door and hunt all the time and do small game trap. And that's virtually gone now. And he's been sounding the alarm for 10 years that as habitat keeps disappearing, hunters are in peril of being able to hunt. And his argument is too, and this is what I want to get into a little bit later, is same thing with Shane Mahoney. You haven't captured the heart of a non-hunter to protect habitat and to really care if they don't actually hunt a little. Like, and I want to get into that a little bit later because I feel like Nicole wants to have her cake and to eat it too. And that is, I'm not sure you can thread that needle, but let's continue with what she's saying. The issue of the 3.5% per capita loss in hunters is in the overall population isn't reflective of a dying tradition. It's reflective of a growing and more urbanized population and less exposure to hunting. Agreed. This leaves a potential rift in democratic society. If the majority isn't for hunting, the minority loses out on their traditions. We saw it happen in British Columbia. Hell, you can see it happen in Washington with bear hunts in Colorado
right now.
Any cat hunt, you just pick one. Trapping. We saw it happen in British Columbia with the banned grizzly hunt. It can certainly happen here if hunters don't act in their own best interests. So, if the majority isn't in support of hunting, the minority will lose out on their traditions. So what do we do? She says, if any hunter wants to do all hunters a favor, we need to be great ambassadors for hunting culture, not to bring people in, but to better their assumptions about who we are. We need to lead on educating and incentivizing private landowners on ways to help the wildlife and plant life they interact with daily. We need to castigate and throw out the damaging image of trophy hunting. And we need to feed our non-hunting friends wild game, leave the door open if they want to join, and hopefully create an advocate either way. So far, I love this. I do that too. Be an ambassador, lead on education, lead on incentivizing private landowners to do more with their land. Don't just leave it up to the feds, the government entities to you can do it. If you own land, you can do that. We need to castigate and throw out the damaging image of trophy hunting. Now,
that's a big one.
I don't disagree with that. It depends on how you're going to define this this idea and image. I do not believe that it's appropriate for hunters to simply promote the idea of hunting to eat. It's just not real. It's not true. It's not.
Yep. There's so many other tons of reasons why you're hunting.
It's nuanced, but there are. It's not that simple. And so I don't disagree that the last thing I want to see is some guy, the way this is perceived as, you shoot some moose, you chop the head off and you go home. Right. That's kind of your trophy hunting, or you're just like obsessed with, you can see some guy who doesn't hunt very often, doesn't really care about hunting, but goes and buys $100,000 tag and then goes out and shoots something to put in his office. Yeah, these are real issues. These are real image problems in the hunting space. At the same time, you and I make no bones about it. I'm trying to find the oldest epic animal. Deer I can find with the most crazy antlers. I want to find a unicorn that, when I was younger, I was happy to find anything that I could get in range on. But as I got older, I want that challenge on myself. I want more time in the mountains. I want to do something. I want to set a challenge for myself that makes it so I might come home without anything at all, because the purity of the hunt is really what I'm after. And people can conflate that with a desire for ego or for a desire to put something on my wall. And so that's a difficult image to articulate the right way. And I do believe she's right in the sense that some hunters just don't do a great job of that.
Yeah. It's like I always say, like, I would rather take an animal on the last day of my hunt than the first day. Because every single day I'm out there hunting, I'm learning about myself, the animals I'm hunting, I'm challenging my body, I'm challenging my mind, and I'm trying to take an older, mature animal in that process. And that's why it's taken me so long. Yeah. So I have way more reward, way more respect for the mountains and the resource by living there every single day rather than getting an animal the first day, bouncing and going home. I didn't put my time in. Putting your time in, you can be rewarded. And you want to go for challenging animal, which people don't understand that portion. They think you're going out there and shooting the first one, coming home because you're some badass hunter, but no.
I did this. I'm in the middle of this Coos deer series from this trip we did to Mexico to hunt Coos deer, and we're out there, Lampers and I see a great buck that I end up shooting on the fourth day, but I saw on the first day. Well, I could have shot it the first day, could have run over there and shot him. But my issue was I wanted to experience the hunt. Yeah. And when we don't kill that deer on the first day, just from the viewer's perspective, look at all the things you saw in that deer's behavior. If I'd shot him the first day, I would never have seen him do this thing and that thing and this thing over here and to chase that doe and to cover all this ground and to do all this mad, crazy stuff. I wouldn't have understood that he blows when he ruts. I would have missed that whole thing. I wouldn't have seen this behavior had I just shot on the first day.
Yeah. And I think it's really cool too, because I read a bunch of your comments that you're getting on that, and people are saying that same thing. Oh, it's cool to watch that whole process go through. And it's like, I'm glad people are taking note of that and realizing, if you shot the first day, you wouldn't have seen all that other stuff. You wouldn't have seen all that cool thing, the animal behavior, what the animal is actually doing, how he's living, what's he doing around, does, what's he doing when the sun comes up. You're going to miss all that story of his life.
And this same thing happens with the next buck that we take with Ryan. And because of the trying to find that oldest animal, ensure that it's something special, and then to stalk it and to be patient with the shot, to get the most ethical one that we can, to get as close as we can, and to wait it out day over day over day. We got to see things about these deer and learn about them in a way that we would never have learned if we had just shot on first day for both of us. I mean, I wouldn't have known much about him at all. Yep. Nothing. Where he likes to roam, what his behavior is. I would have cut all that education short. And that's what setting a challenge for yourself to find that oldest animal is all about. For me, it's to match wits with the oldest thing out there. I'm not just out there. I want to figure them out. I want to know I want to challenge myself in terms of my woodcraft, my hunting ability, my skills as a man out in the woods trying to figure out how to find that oldest, most rare critter. What works, what doesn't work, what do they do, what makes them tick.
Yeah,
that's all part
I don't know
of
what the right word here is, but I almost feel cheated. Like I'm cheating myself in a way by not getting to experience that, by seeing an animal multiple days and watching how he lives, passing up some animal to try to find something a little bit differently, find some old and mature. Like if you're just there for such a short period of time, immerse yourself in nature, you have to go back home.
Well, bears.
If you tag out,
we could have tagged out.
Going back to your office.
We could have shot a bunch of bears that were just young, little, that were just bears.
Yeah.
And all the behavior and all the things that we saw, plus we wouldn't have pushed our bodies to the point that we're pushing them to see what you're made of. And I don't know, to connect with nature, to deprive yourself of the comforts of civilization, which I think is essential for human beings to suffer a little, to be in pain and misery so that you can really appreciate the luxuries in life in a new light. Hot water, a refrigerator, a milkshake, and a hamburger and fries. Like you have a whole new profound respect and appreciation for those things.
And again, this comes back to, it's hard for the general public to realize that without just calling you a trophy hunter, because you can't, like, we just went on a tangent for like 5 minutes. It took us that long to start talking about our passions. You could keep going on and on about it, but for a non-hunter who just sees it, it just looks like you're out there trying to kill something, and that's all you care about is just that kill, that moment of you smiling behind something.
Well, and let's give the devil his due, right? Like, let's give the devil his due, because there are a bunch of hunters out there, Brady, that are shallow, just want to kill something, just want the biggest thing for their wall. They don't really care if they even poach it. They're out there for all the wrong reasons. So that's true. That's true. I just think that is a much smaller, that's just a tiny fraction of the hunters out there. The majority are not like that. And yet she's right in the sense that it's not well communicated, because those individuals that I just talked about that are just terrible for us, they're conflated with people like you and Ryan and myself. We get mixed into the same categories, and we're not at all. So you give the devil his due and admit it, yes, but then people will use and can use those examples to put us all into that bucket because we wanted to find something that was old. And so I do think that she's right, and we should put that challenge on ourselves. That's what we're trying to do. When I put out content, that's what I'm trying to show, that it is about finding something old, but the reason for that is completely different than what you think. And that all comes from the context and the joy of the hunt being portrayed and the respect for the animal. We're not shooting them in the ass. We're not taking these shots that we're just trying to break it down piece by piece to get them. We're like, we don't want to cause any undue suffering. We're showing that we're willing to let the animal walk away rather than take a marginal shot and risk. That respect is not lost on the viewers. It's not lost on non-hunters watching it. And so they look at that and they say, yeah, they are trying to find that oldest animal, but also they're not just trying to find it so they can put it on their wall. They're not mercilessly just trying to put a notch in their belt, their bedpost. They're doing it for totally different reasons. And you can see it based on the way they comport themselves throughout the rest of the hunt.
Yep. 100%. It's like, even when I always talk about, taxidermy and stuff like that, I'm like, whoa, you just want something on your wall. But it's like, no, I have animal mounts in my house and in my office because it's art. At the end of the day, I want to look at that animal. And if I look at a mount, I can remember every single detail about that hunt. It's crazy. Like, I forget all sorts of things in life. I forget what I need at the grocery store. I forget what I'm going to do at work today. But like, I can look at that animal behind me and tell you every single thing that happened to the smallest little detail, because it's art behind me and it just brings you right back in to that hunt and how you just want to be there and you just want to experience it again. And you want to share it with someone else, or you want to, just tell a story about you were out there doing something primal, something just deep down in your core. It just drove you to, stay up super late hiking in the dark, making, melting snow for water, like all the things you are uncomfortable, but just enjoyable in the moment. And you just want to be there more, because I can look at that and be like, yeah, I can't wait to have some vacation time in this hunting season to go do that thing again, because I love, putting my body through those situations to pursue bigger animals.
Absolutely. Going back to her article, she says, we need to feed our non-hunting friends wild game and leave the door open if they want to join, and hopefully create an advocate either way. Okay. She says the biggest necessary overhaul is the need to shift our focus from the unsubstantiated fear propagated by the R3 movement, the recruit movement, and move toward engaging in greater and more nuanced public education in conjunction with real physical work to restore habitat and ecosystems, maybe even in our own backyard. So I don't disagree with her there. I think that focusing on conservation, the protection of private land, the encouragement for public landowners to maximize their land, like for better habitat and ecosystems. I think that's great. So at the very end, she says, here's my call to action. Don't convince someone to go on a turkey hunt with you. Instead, ask more people to help with a local habitat restoration project. Certify your garden or even your balcony. And if you don't have private land, invest some time in a small tract of public land. Then tell folks about it. Toot your own horn. Bring non-hunters into the habitat making fold. If every hunter committed to bettering 1 acre of land in a year, more than 15 million acres could be restored. And surprisingly, that's 1 million more acres than would have been restored by hunters in 1958. Now,
sounds good, but
yeah, when I look at this, and so first of all, I don't disagree that with this, but in some ways it reminds me of this analogy. Some rich dude goes and spends $500,000 to hunt a lion in Africa, and he does it and comes home. Then some individual comes along and says, and you can justify it by all sorts of dollar bills and habitat. They add value to the lions. So the locals are like, yeah, we can live amongst lion because they are a huge income source. So the fear and the struggle that comes with having lions out your back door becomes, which is something we just don't have to deal with, right? Crocodiles in the river.
Could you imagine?
Yeah, it's just a whole nother level of life that they deal with that we don't deal with. And they're third world. They don't have much in the form of resources either. And so in the midst of that, you want them to care about the crocodiles and the lions while also they're poor and they're just barely getting by. Like the first thing I do is kill as many crocodiles and lions as I can because I have kids to raise and a family to feed. Exactly. And I have no need for anything the lion eats, I could be eating. Like
exactly.
It's practically speaking, they're not incentivized at all to give a damn about a lion in Africa. But when you put a $500,000 price tag on a lion, and some dude flies in, buys that, goes and kills that lion and gives the tribe at large and the government $500,000 of income, they say, hey, leave that lion alone. And that like these things are fine. We can deal with it. Be careful. Yep. Let's do this. Let's do that. But yeah. And they can prosper over time as they manage that resource. They can then become less impoverished, give more habitat, more concern to habitat. And as that resource generates value, that resource, lions as a group will all just benefit.
Yep, they're going to increase the population.
Even though you're killing one, that one is like, or that those two overall make all lion lives better. Somebody comes along and says, yeah, well, I want my cake and to eat it too. I want this guy to give 500 grand to those people just because he cares about
and
lions
and
not kill one. How about that? Okay.
Yeah, that's what you hear a lot right now. Or at least I've heard last.
That's kind of what I feel like Nicole is saying a little bit. And let me just I'm not trying to bag on her because I love her work and I think this is a brilliant article actually.
Mm-hmm.
But just playing the devil's advocate.
Yep.
I think about it and I think that's not human nature. I'm sorry, but at the end of the day, human beings, that's not most human beings aren't going to behave that way. They're not just going to, even if this guy has millions and millions of dollars, he's not going to, if $500,000 is nothing to him, he's just not going to do it out of the kindness of his heart. He's not.
Yeah. Everyone always needs something kind of back in return.
There is something like human nature isn't wired that way, especially an individual who worked their ass off. And you don't get to that position of wealth without whether it was honest or dishonest, you put in the grind.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Whether you got that money fairly or unfairly, you still are that type of person that sacrificed one way or another. At the end of the day, that sort of individual with that kind of money, generally speaking, is willing to invest in something that they want, but not willing to invest in something just out of the kindness of their heart. It's just human nature.
It is.
I'm not trying to be cynical. I'm not trying to, it's just real. It's just pragmatic. It's just what it is. And so when Nicole is saying this, she's saying, my call to action is don't get people to go hunting. Just educate people on what hunting is. Well, I don't disagree with that. No, I can get on board with that. No. I could totally get on board with that. However, when I make films like I make to try to educate people on what hunting is all about, how we do it, why we do it, when you and I and Pedro and Lampers are up on a mountain in the middle of beautiful country and we're going everywhere, we're seeing mountain goats in the cliffs next to bears, and we take a bear and then we're eating it over a campfire. People look at that. Lots of people look at that and they say, I can respect it. And I understand why bear hunting is a viable, modern day, useful, beneficial, even positive activity.
Yep.
And then a subset of them are going to say, I have to do it. I can't go through life not doing it. That's a natural byproduct.
They just got inspired. They got
inspired. Nicole, how do I promote it like you said, and then also stop them from coming?
They don't stop them,
on the hunts.
And that's what's hard. It's like, you could say we need to have everyone go out and support habitat and habitat restoration. But at the end of the day, that's dirty work too. It's hard. It's not something that's easy. You have to grab a shovel. You have to get down in a trench and sweat and do all sorts of stuff to make.
She must be hanging out with a lot more Christian-like, nice, kind, or just benevolent humans than I know. Hey, you want to go help me build a fence for this habitat? Yeah, no, see you later. Hey, you want to come shoot a turkey and we can eat it tomorrow? Yeah, let's go. Human nature, again, it's.
And I think a little bit too, it's going to be even harder and harder as the society gets to this scary position that we're in, where we're all relying on technology and we're all hidden, behind these little square rectangles that we all have in our hands the whole time. Would you, on your Saturday, want to go out, like I said, like you just said, build a fence, get dirty, do all this stuff? Or would you rather sit in your cool air conditioning, sit by the pool, just hang out? And by sitting at the pool, there's also no wildlife habitat there, by the way. But just chilling right there.
Yep.
Or do you want to go get dirty? Because you've been accustomed to that comfortable lifestyle, and to promote habitat and promote the wildlife, you have to get a little bit uncomfortable for a while for the betterment of the whole.
Agreed. Now, here's my other take on this. and I've heard Randy Newberg, and I've heard Randy Newberg and Shane Mahoney both talk about this.
Love Shane Mahoney.
And I believe this is true. Okay. We all have friends who are like, I like that you hunt, Brady, and the meat you shared with me, that's great. And I think that you're a good person and you're doing a great thing. That same person watches some propaganda video about bear hunting and how cruel it is. That person will turn on the hunting community in a hot second in an emotional take and ban hunting. This has been, again, human nature. I'm trying to explain this. Like, when someone goes out for the first time, and they put a deer in the crosshairs or a bear, and they shoot it and they take that life. And then they go over there and they break it down, they pack it home, they make sausage and their steaks, and they have friends over and they share the meat and they do this. That person is forever changed.
Yep.
That person,
exactly,
in a way, is spiritually a different person than they were before this happened. And when someone comes along to get rid of hunting or to threaten it or to make it disappear, because of that spiritual change, because of that change deep down, because they did the thing, it is different. Their commitment is different than the person who just goes, well, I know that Joe Rogan does it, and I respect Joe, and Joe likes hunting, so I'll support hunting. Then as soon as some pushback comes, even if they're educated, even if they know sort of the nuances of it, you still see many of them switch to banning hunting in a hot second when their emotions get involved, because they're not understanding it from in their soul, from a spiritual sense, from a deep in their DNA type of way. They're sort of, they've experienced it from an intellectual standpoint. And from the intellectual standpoint, it's like rational, but then when the emotional argument gets made to them, too often than not, I see those people walk away, like completely reverse. They go, because emotion, especially in today's society, reigns supreme over the top of rational thought. And so,
that's exactly why I think there's all sorts of wolf hunting, anti-bear hunting billboards, all around Yellowstone. You just get out of this amazing place, Yellowstone area, seeing all this wildlife, and then you get struck with all these signs about hunting's bad, hunting this, and like you said, you might have been okay with hunting for earlier, your friends might have hunted, then you see something like that can instantly just trigger it, and I was like, well, I had a great experience seeing all these animals, and hunting must be killing all these animals. Like, maybe it's something I'm not thinking about, and that billboard on that sign, in Montana is going to instantly strike them as, now I'm against it because I don't have a deep connection. I don't know anything besides for what my friend gave me some meat and I tried. I don't have that. What did I do to get that meat and acquire it, and the struggle and the moment walking up to it and all the things that we're discussing?
Yeah.
Don't have that.
So two issues at play with the article and what I think are areas that need to be fleshed out more. Right. One is that, how do you thread this needle of promoting hunting while also not having more people want to hunt?
Yeah.
I don't know how that's done, because I try to inspire, educate, teach, help people, empower people, and do something inspiring that they can aspire to. And by doing that, I can't do that to get people to care about hunting and also keep them from wanting to hunt. It's like, I don't get how to do that, because by nature of what I create, people are going to want to do it. And I don't know how, do I create something that makes them not want to do it? That doesn't make sense. I can't. That's not, people watched Meat Eater. They were educated. Joe Rogan's like, I'm going to look into hunting. This interests me. And then what do you do? He became a hunter. How do you get Joe to care about hunting and then also not become a hunter? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how you thread that needle. Okay. I think it's sort of pie in the sky. I think it's kind of having your cake and eating it too. Could you minimize it? I still don't know how you do that. So that's number one. How do you promote it and then also not let anybody else join the fold? Like, and she's not proactively saying, she said, keep the door open if they want to. Just, you don't have to make a ton of new. I'm just saying that if you're going to create inspiring, motivational, encouraging, useful content, the byproduct will be people want to do it that have never done it before. And you can't put a gate on that. It's like, you can't create the content and then also say, but also I don't want to have anybody join. So that's number one. Number two is back to what we were just saying. And that is, I don't know that you have a true convert, a true, heels dug in proponent of hunting if they don't experience the spiritual experience of it. If they don't actually do it, I don't know that you really have a true heart in this thing, that you truly care about wildlife and conservation until you've become a hunter and done the thing. There's something about it's like a conversion. And I've heard Randy Newberg talk about this, Mahoney, where they've looked into these activities. And it's like, once someone has done it and been there, there's a different, and they only have to do it once or twice. But once that's happened, they go, their whole life is dedicated to conservation, participating, finding ways to save animals in a way that it never was if they were just voyeuristically looking at it from the outside and going, yeah, I like Joe and hunting. It's not the same.
I think it goes in a lot of, maybe this is a horrible analogy, but I just thought of it in my head, so I'm going to go with it. So like, there was something sports related here. Yeah. It's like, and a lot of us in our life, we won't support something, again, like we're saying the whole time, until you've actually tried it. But it might be fun and enjoyable. You'll support other people doing it. Like myself, I have never played tennis once in my life. So I am probably not going to be the person who's going to support whatever tennis courts and rackets going up everywhere, or support, education around it, or going to do it because I've never done it. So you might say, hey, I want you to support my activity, but I've never done it before. It's going to be very hard for me to want to give money or my time to go do that until, let's say, you, Brian, want to say, hey, Brady, let's go play tennis. I love tennis. You show me the excitement about it. You immerse me into your sport, your activity, like you would with someone with the hunting. And then, now you got me hooked now. Now I'm going to maybe give some of my dollars. Now I'm going to go to some meetings and try to have, some more tennis courts in my town.
Again, it's understanding, I think, human nature, understanding human beings. It's something about experiencing it is a totally different type of dedication to it than someone who has never done it. And just understanding it rationally and intellectually isn't the same as understanding it in your heart. And so, especially when it comes to the killing of something, I'm telling you, there's something when you kill an animal, and this still happens every time. When I kill an animal, there's a mix of emotions. There's a sense of loss, especially if it's an old animal. I feel like in some ways, that thing has withstood all the tests of time. I snuck up on him and I did him in. There's a little bit of loss there because I know he'll never be out there again. And I'm the one that did it. Consciously, I did it. Actively, proactively. So there is a mixed set of emotions there. At the same time, I'm thinking, I just did the impossible. I just found the rarest of the rare. I just did something that I may not be able to repeat in my life again. Right? It's mixed with that. And then it's mixed with like, this will feed my family. And I have a lot of packing to do. And this was really hard and a sense of relief because I accomplished the goal after 360 days of shooting my bow or getting out and hiking and being fit. I accomplished the thing, right? So it's mixed with all of these nuanced feelings and emotions and so forth. So then I leave, right? When I go and I break down the animal, I cut off this leg, I skin it, I hang it in the tree, and I hang it in the tree, and I break it down. All those feelings that I feel when I initially shoot it are completely, spiritually, they are completely buried under, I can't explain it. As I break down the animal, it becomes, I just keep, instead of the sense of loss, it gets filled with a sense of gratitude. I'm thankful for the life of the animal, but all that sort of negative feeling, I guess, toward what's gone on gets superseded and overwhelmed with the animal's value as something to feed the family. And the more I break it into this quarter and put it in a meat bag and this into this and the straps into that, it's like it heals the wounds of loss that I had.
Exactly.
There's something cathartic about the experience. There's something about it that is holistic. And then when I pack it out and bring it home and I eat it at my table, I don't feel guilt. I don't feel sorrow like I did. I don't feel anything except thankfulness. It's a weird thing
that your thoughts totally have changed.
Yeah. I don't know that someone that hasn't done that, and it's as primal as it is to be, it's as innate as being human is. It's hunting is man's oldest try at life, as Shane Mahoney says. It's the thing that hunting is the thing that has made us who we are today. It's our first thing that we did that made us able to survive.
It is.
So to reconnect with that for modern people, to reconnect with that, I just think it's life changing. And so I think society as a whole, like Luther Standing Bear says, man's heart away from nature becomes hard. I think that's true. I think when people become disconnected. So what I'm saying is I just want more people to experience it. But yes, will it cost me opportunity? Will it be harder for me to get a tag? Will it be harder for me to go out and hunt?
It will 100%. Be. Yep. So, and that's the thing that's very difficult. It's like, yeah, can we keep it the 15 million number we're at right now? And how are we going to ever keep that the same, but also not lose all the habitat like we're talking about? Like people who don't hunt or don't care are just going to do things the total opposite way. And it gets kind of scary when you think about everything that's going on.
This brings me to, let's talk about solutions for guys that are listening that are simply going, yeah, it is getting harder. Let's give the devil his due. It's getting harder. A lot of people do want to hunt. That's real. Let's read your take.
All right. I hope you enjoyed this podcast with Brady Miller. This is part 1 of a 2-part series, so stay tuned for part 2. Thanks for tuning in.